So now, having seen an overview of the origin of ABC, we come to the problem. Namely, this is the so-called Young Champalan cardophonetic alphabet. And we see that the Ho, which is the type origin of letter A, does not match the vulture, which is what Champalan says letter A comes from. Or the stars of space goddess B with two breasts does not equal the foot or the arm, which Champalan says letter B comes from. And letter G is not really defined by Champalan, but to look at letter A, Champalan first there was Thomas Young published a 39-page booklet titled Egypt. This was the starting point for Egyptology. Champalan read this and ended up publishing close to 1,000 to 2,000 pages of expansion on what Young had done, such as his notebook, Relative Alphabet of the Phonetic Hieroglyphs, Egyptian Pantheon, Precise Hieroglyphic System, Egyptian Grammar, and a handwritten Egyptian dictionary. So if we go to his Relative Alphabet of the Phonetic Hieroglyphs, we see that in paragraph 80, in order to explain the Alexander cartouche, he says that what he believes was a sparrowhawk, technically it's a vulture, was letter A of Alexander. He says the sparrowhawk, the ibis, and 3 other species of birds are constantly or consistently employed for letter A. So Gardner eventually defines the vulture as the glottal stop, or phonetic Hebrew A. And here we see an ECL10 is a stub model that Champalan says that the mouth articulation, which he says comes from the R of Alexander, right here, the R of Cleopatra here, and the R of Bernekes right here, made just the R articulation or phonetic to the Egyptians, whereas in reality, the mouth makes all of these phonetic sounds, including the vowels and the so-called mutes. Yeah, on the surface looks like a good pattern matching, but if we look at the specifics of this, such as that the A should be the 3rd letter in Cleopatra, whereas technically the 3rd letter is E, and there's 2 A's in Cleopatra, but they're not aligned properly. This is an anomaly that can be explained. There's also 2 A's in Alexander, but there's only 1 bird, which is another anomaly we can't explain. The R should be the 2nd letter in Bernice, but it's shown as the 3rd letter, among hundreds of other problems that the future Egyptologists will have to deal with, and linguists. Here we see the first 4 letters, A, B, G, D, written in the various languages. So here we see that in cuneiform, seemingly Ugaritic alphabet, A, B, G, and D, were started to be written phonetically as A, Ba, Ga, Di, Da, like baby noises, in cuneiform before the Old Bibline script was written as the plow, B, man with erection, and the delta in Old Bibline, and then South Arabian as this and Phoenician as this. So it's possibly that cuneiform was the intermediate between hieroglyphs and, or not intermediate, but water testing stage before letter-based hieroglyphs began to form. Here we see the Dendera zodiac, which has an A at the center, or Ho. We see the other letters of the alphabet. Going downward, here we see that Egypt is the longest attested language of all time, spoken by over 4,500 years attested. And then we see Greek as the second longest attested language. But according to the present linguistics model, we are to believe, in spite of the fact that Greeks themselves, such as Herodotus, said that the names of the Greek gods came from the Egyptian hieroglyphs, that we are to believe that Greek had nothing to do with Egyptian hieroglyphs. That's the status quo model, which is incorrect. Same for all these languages. Hebrew, Sanskrit, Arabic, English, Coptic, which are all lunar script Egyptian-based. Here we see the new procession language family, or procession script, which shows that Spanish, English, Hindi, and so on are all procession language base. So what this means is, if I go over here, that originally the Egyptians had a mathematical system, number system, values 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. 100,000 is the tadpole. A million is the man with a palm branch on his head, his two arms raised, and 1,000 is this so-called shenrang, which is the original circle-shaped cartouche. Equals 10 million. And this goes up to 90 million, which is the 72nd stokia. And this is found in the myth that Osiris gets trapped by 72 conspirators in a chest. This is the end of the cycle of the so-called equinox procession table. And this is where the alphabet came from, or the Phoenician alphabet came from the first 22 stokia, which goes up to here, the earth support pillar, and then the Greek alphabet ended up going to 27 stokia, which makes numbers up to 900. And this eventually became, some of these letters were used as, up to 900 were used mathematically, but then letters F, digamma, kappa, and sampi were used as mathematical numbers. The rest were used as phonetic signs to make words. So these are divided as type 28, which means there was 27 to 28 letters in that based language, or the number of days of the moon. 14 means the language is based on the 14 beats of the drama of Vishnu, if I have that correctly. And then Arabic and Hebrew are type 22 based languages. That's the number of characters they use.